This is the most versatile origin so far. Last week, I really enjoyed flying in the skies as a storm chaser, but this week we're diving into the dark arts of voodoo magic. These people can manipulate their victims no matter where they try to hide. Not only that, their powers also allow them to capture, to heal, to strengthen, and to escape. Without further ado, let me introduce to you the Puppeteers. When you use your primary ability G, you can summon a voodoo doll. Your voodoo doll will look at you as long as you're the closest puppeteer. Pressing G again will remove the voodoo doll. If the doll has something in its main hand and you press G, the doll is going to teleport to your location instead of being removed. And then you can right click to take the item away and click to remove. Voodoo dolls actually force load the chunks that they are in. So as long as you're in the same dimension, they will teleport to you. The brown bar at the bottom indicates whether or not you have a voodoo doll summoned. The indicator works across dimensions. If you summon a voodoo doll in the overworld and then hop into the nether, you can see that the indicator bar is still lit on. And as long as the main hand of the puppet is empty, you can clear the puppet and summon a new one. If we hop back into the overworld, you can see that the doll is gone. However, when you have a voodoo doll that's holding an item in a different dimension, it will not be able to teleport to you. The purple bar at the bottom indicates whether or not you have a target locked. In order to lock onto a target, you hit them, and they will emit particle effects that only you can see. As soon as you hit a second target, the initial target will be cleared. In order for you to lock onto the target, you have to be the closest puppeteer to it. Double check for particle effects that you can see. You cannot select another puppeteer as your victim because they will always be the closest puppeteer to themselves. You can also target yourself by hitting the secondary ability key. When you hit it again, you clear all targets. You can set your victims on fire by burning your doll. If it's a mob and not a player, then the state of the victim directly mirrors the state of the doll. If you retrieve your doll when both are still on fire, then the mob will stay on fire for 8 seconds before it can put itself out. Setting players on fire works a bit differently. When you have a player selected and you set your doll on fire, an arrow is going to land on the target and set the target on fire. When the doll extinguishes, another arrow will land to extinguish the target. If you retrieve your doll when both are on fire, then the player will be extinguished. If you switch your target when your original victim is still on fire, then the original victim will stay on fire for a little while. If you're in a separate dimension, you can still set your victim on fire as long as they're in a loaded chunk. However, this does not work for players. If you give your voodoo doll an ender pearl, you can teleport your target by using G. This uses up the ender pearl in the process. Since your puppet force loads the chunk that they were spawned in or teleported to, you can basically teleport anywhere. If you use your secondary ability to select yourself, you can basically teleport yourself to your doll from anywhere, as long as you're in the same dimension. If you don't have a target selected, an error sound will play. If you attempt to teleport across dimension, this sound will play. If you give your puppet a potion or a potion ingredient to hold, the target will have the effect. So as long as the puppet has the item, the effect will go on indefinitely. This works perfectly across dimension. The potion ingredient itself will always give a level 1 potion effect. The only potions that are not implemented are the instant potions. They are way too overpowered. The way that this works is that when the puppet receives an item, it applies the effect to the target. As soon as the item gets taken away, the effect also gets removed. So you can also use this ability to clear any negative effects that you have. So for example, if you were splashed with poison 2, all you need to do is to target yourself, give the potion to the puppet, and removing it. And now you no longer have poison. Pillagers, Vindicators, and Evokers don't attack you, but Ravagers and Witches still do. Iron Golems attack you on sight, and Villagers raise their prices to absurd levels. When there is a block with a skylight level of 13 or above within a 3-block radius, you get Hunger and Slowness. On top of that, you can only eat raw meat. You can't eat cooked food, vegetables, or drink potions or milk. Okay, that about wraps up the Puppeteer origin. I just want to mention 2 things before we end the video. The first thing is that there are actually plenty of ways to tag multiple victims. This includes if you tag a player and then they log off, and then you can tag another, and when the player logs back on, you would have 2 victims. You can also do something similar with multiple dimensions, where you tag a victim, you travel to another dimension, you tag another, and now you have multiple. If you figured out the mechanics, you can actually use this to your advantage. Maybe if you're, I don't know, in like a SMP Civil War or something, you can tag both you and your friend and heal both of you at the same time. The second thing is that, like I said before, the Voodoo dolls actually force load the chunk that they're in. So if you do force load query, you will see that this is the force loaded chunk. If I use G to remove it, you see that the force loaded chunk is now removed. So the thing about this is that these Voodoo dolls actually still obey physics. They still have gravity, they can be pushed by water, etc. So if you somehow push them into a different chunk, or for example, if you're in the end and you spawn them on the edge and they fall into the void and disappear, you can actually leave a chunk force loaded forever. Even if you're in creative mode and then you decide to punch them out instead of using G to destroy it, you would leave a force loaded chunk loaded forever. One way to solve this is to choose Puppeteer, spawn a Voodoo doll and then removing it. That would also solve the issue. If you have a force loaded chunk, you can also just force load remove all, and that would remove all the force loaded chunks in the dimension. You can also use execute in, for example in the nether, run, and then you can check if there are any force loaded chunks. And that about sums up all the issues so far. Even though some of these don't work as intended, none of these are game breaking. So you should be fine. Don't worry. Hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you have fun. Stay creative. And goodbye. Bye bye.